Hi, my name is Jillian Dabrowski.
My name is Alyssa Souza.
My name's Dermot Sheehan.
My name is Andres Penna.
And I'm Jillian Crowder.
Great. And you are Sustainabuilders?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Drew Krutt. I'm a senior judge. I own a practice called Quantum Performance Partners, and I work with private equity funds and lead merger integrations, carve-outs, and turnarounds. Before that, I launched a business called Amazon Fresh, which was Amazon's grocery delivery business in San Francisco and then New York City. I've worked at Alvarez and Marsal and FTI Consulting, some of the big four firms of consulting. I've also been a chief operating officer of a $750 million revenue food manufacturer. That's my background, so operations related.
All right, I'm Michelle. I work in finance. I'm a finance manager for a major record label, and I handle all of the catalog deals, so all the older stuff that is everything from 10 years old to what your parents listen to. And we purchase, it's basically buying assets. We purchase all those assets. Sometimes we renew contracts, and sometimes we'll put out new material as well.
I'm Barney Erzenberg. I'm one of your senior judges today. I'm a recovering lawyer and spent the last 15 years of my working life as the global ethics officer for a British aerospace company.
I'm a recovering accountant, partner at Arthur Anderson, and now I'm an executive vice president at a spinoff called Protivity. And I am not a senior judge.
You're just in time. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
It's my turn now?
Yes.
Thank you, guys. I am Vin Betancourt. I'm an instructor here at LMU, International Business, so a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I don't want to delay anymore. Sorry for my tardiness.
That's it. It's 9:30 exactly,
Yeah,
so we can
9:30.
kick off.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got to read this. In this part of the competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who they are before you begin. You will have 25 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all three counts. During this time, teams will be uninterrupted. When you are finished, the judges will ask you questions for 10 to 15 minutes. During the Q&A, both you and judges stay in character, and after the Q&A, we'll come out of character and share some feedback. Okay, make sense? All right, please.
Good morning, esteemed members of the Amazon and WeWork Board of Directors. Today, we are here to present Cubicles to Communities, transforming vacant office spaces into affordable, sustainable, co-living residences. Before we get started, we'd like to introduce ourselves. I'm Jillian Dabrowski, the Sustainability Analyst.
I'm Alyssa Souza, the Ethical Analyst.
I'm Dermot Sheehan, the Brand Analyst.
I'm Andres Penna, the financial analyst.
And I'm Jillian again, the Regulatory Analyst.
Today, we propose that you expand your current partnership and launch a new initiative, transforming vacant office spaces into sustainable, affordable co-living. This initiative will directly impact Sustainable Development Goal 11, making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. We will specifically be targeting targets 1 and 3, ensuring access for all to adequate, safe, and affordable housing, and target 3, enhancing inclusive and sustainable urbanization by 2030. During the next 25 minutes, we would like to discuss 5 key factors: the ethical problem, the partnership, the financial implications, the legal and regulatory factors, along with the solution. Alyssa, will you get us started with the ethical problem at hand?
Thank you, Jillian. When housing is not affordable, it does not only impact individuals, it impacts communities as well. These are the human consequences of an affordability crisis. Workers are pushed out, neighborhoods unravel, and inequality grows, not just economically, but socially and structurally. The core problem is clear. The average rent in San Francisco is over $3,415, while the median income is $69,000. That means people are spending 65% or more just to have a place to live. If living in San Francisco means sacrificing more than half of your income just to keep a roof over your head, then we are not building a city for everyone. We are building a city only for the wealthy. Teachers, firefighters, and countless other essential workers who pour their time and energy into this community are being pushed out of the very neighborhoods that they help uplift. These are the people who make San Francisco livable, vibrant, and safe. And yet, they're the ones who no longer can afford to stay. That's exclusion that is not sustainable nor ethical. Furthermore, this is not just a housing issue, it's a values issue. Who gets to live here, who gets to stay, and who is unfortunately left behind? The answer to that last question should be no one. So how did we get here? Let's look at the root causes. First, vacant office spaces. San Francisco has one of the highest vacancy rates in the country, and yet these office buildings sit empty while people cannot find an affordable place to live. How can we justify that? Second, slow housing production. Outdated processes and red tape delay progress at every stage. And third, the wage-rent gap. Wages have simply not kept up in San Francisco, but this could change. These are the roots that are all tangled, but they have one singular outcome: a city that works for fewer and fewer people. That's why we need to address the causes so we can create a healthier, more inclusive living environment. That brings us to the ethical imperative. Ethical leadership means protecting people, not just profits. This is a more urgency, especially in an area that it's needed highest. In communities that are already under pressure, where families, educators, and nurses are barely holding on, all while downtown cores are hollowed out by remote work, now filled with underused buildings and missed opportunities. And with housing affordability at a breaking point, people are being forced out of the very communities that they helped build. This is why we need to build inclusive communities where everyone has a chance to grow, stay, and belong. Inclusive communities are not just a byproduct, they are the goal. What if office space, unused office space, could achieve this goal? With that in mind, we begin to think about the role companies play in shaping our city's futures. Dermot, would you be able to tell us more about the partnership between Amazon and WeWork?
Yes, thank you for that analysis, Alyssa. My name is Dermot, and I'll be explaining why we believe WeWork and Amazon are perfect fits for tackling this issue. As we speak, WeWork and Amazon are already established partners in the Bay Area. Under this partnership, WeWork provides flexible office spaces for Amazon workers. This partnership has allowed for Amazon to expand their presence in California, San Francisco, and the Bay Area with ease, demonstrating effective collaboration and a strong working relationship. It is in our belief and in our vision that you can expand upon this strong foundation to drive even further impact, innovation, and take on new challenges together. So why San Francisco specifically? San Francisco specifically is home to a nation-high near 40% office vacancy rate, making it ground zero for innovation. And across America, office to residential conversions are booming. In 2025 alone, as you can see here, it is projected that 70,700 of these apartments are going to be set to emerge. The demand for affordable co-living housing has never been greater. And we're here to explain to you why you at WeWork and Amazon hold the keys to mitigating these vacancies. Together, you have the ability to become dominant industry leaders in these conversions and lead the way in the future of sustainable urban development. So why WeWork? Why do we choose you specifically? Because years ago, you had a transformative vision where you successfully already completed 2 of these conversions through your We Live initiative. However, due to a variety of external factors, including which we believe the number one, a low pre-COVID demand, the idea was slightly ahead of its time. However, today, the conditions are ideal for the relaunching this vision. Now with Amazon, this once forward-thinking concept is ready to meet the demand that we are seeing across the country. As partners, we believe your 2 companies specifically hold a competitive advantage against all other companies and developers who are attempting these conversions. So why Amazon? Why do we select you specifically? As an ever-growing company who posted a yearly annual revenue of nearly $700 billion in 2024, we recognize that you are already a key and corporate investor in housing affordability across the country. As you stated here on your Amazon Housing Equity Fund, We know housing is a really big challenge for a lot of people, especially in and around expensive metro urban cities. And we feel strongly that we can help give back to our communities by helping preserve and create thousands of affordable homes. At Amazon, you understand the landscape and challenges of affordable housing, and you have experiences in these projects already. This understanding is what is going to lead to a successful venture. Furthermore, we want to shed light on Amazon's Housing Equity Fund, which is $3.6 billion allocated towards affordable housing, which is already making a difference by your offices and presence in Washington State, Nashville, Tennessee, and Arlington, Virginia. This fund demonstrates an honorable and necessary commitment to addressing affordable housing. And in our vision, it is what can be expanded to help provide funds in the areas in San Francisco and the Bay Area where your office presence is expanding tremendously. So ideal partners, and to sum up why we believe it's you two that are the best to take on this project. We believe that you have all the tangibles to make this happen. One, you possess the competency. WeWork possesses the real estate expertise and past experience in these conversions to make this success. Two, you have the commitment. Amazon has the commitment of, quote, providing thousands of affordable homes. And three, the capital and resources. Like we mentioned earlier, as an ever-growing company who posted the second highest annual revenue in 2024, along with near $4 billion allocated towards housing equity, this pilot provides low risk and potential for high returns. So lastly, for my part, what's in it for you? Why even try to do this especially? One, we believe that this will be a profitable venture. We'll get into exact numbers later, but we believe this will be a great investment for Amazon and serve as a way WeWork can diversify their revenue stream. Two, we believe it will provide massive brand and PR benefits, enhancing your reputation as socially responsible corporations, which is ever so more important in a world where stakeholders are demanding that businesses provide not just for their own profits, but for the communities, people, and society. Brand benefits and PR benefits in today's world can simply not be understated. And then lastly, this project supplies a more dynamic and diverse workforce with the ability and potential to house some of your own employees and retain some of your youngest and greatest talent. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Andres, who will be tackling some more financial implications.
Thank you, Dermot. Refurbishing these vacant office spaces into affordable housing units is obviously a socially responsible solution, but it also makes financial sense. So let me help you break it down for you. To show sort of the financial feasibility, I'll be looking to a Gensler Pew study, which coincidentally has used the city of LA as an example which could help prove our concept. Now, within this conveniently placed red circle, that shows sort of the data within the city that they found, which would include the homelessness rate and the downtown office vacancy, as for an example. Within the next slide, it's some background information on the unit in particular within the study in LA, which I guess some key points to point out. The units per floor is around 48, and the total units in general was around 864. Now next, looking into some of the costs that would be associated with converting these office units into affordable housing units, we'd be looking into some of the developmental costs, which in total the project cost would associate to around $195 million or $595 per gross square feet. That obviously sounds like a hefty price tag, but given the tax incentives and subsidies, which I will go through later on, this could help alleviate that cost tremendously. Now looking into the project operating costs, some points I guess I would like to point out is that for the rent for a single within this project, it'd be around $1,000. Comparison to LA, that'd be around $2,000 to $2,800. The operating expenses would be around $14.50 per square feet. Within LA, that'd be around $44 per square feet. And for rent escalation, they estimated to be around 3%, which in for LA's case, that'd be around 5%. That's not including also the consumer price index, which is indicator for inflation, at around 3%. And now comparing these factors to the city of San Francisco within that chart there, it is pretty clear that the city is in desperate need of a much more cost-effective strategy in creating these affordable units, with exception to rent escalation. Lastly, also looking into the construction costs, the estimates would be around $356 per gross square feet, and I guess on the lower end, it would be around $299 per gross square feet, which would depend on, let's say, if they don't fully replace the existing systems within the unit. That's the main determinant. Within LA, those construction costs could vary between around $200 to $400 gross square feet for a standard unit, or if in a luxury unit, it could be around $500 to $800 or more within a unit. And once again, for comparison with San Francisco, there, I think once again sort of shows that it is clear that the city is once again in desperate need of a much more cost-effective strategy in constructing these affordable housing units. And besides the potential revenue upside, there are also some potential opportunities for income as well in other areas. As for an example to point out, for parking spaces, it's around $100 a month. And then finally, looking at the official results that they found from the Gensler Pew study, it's pretty clear on the cost-effective benefits that they found within the study. More specifically, the cost per unit was around 2 to 4 times lower than either new build or office to conventional apartment, and the construction costs were around 25 to 35% lower per square foot than office to conventional apartments. And as we see here, this was around the cost for co-living conversion costs within LA, and you compare that to the national average for the cost to build a studio in general, which is a brand new studio apartment. It's pretty clear on the difference and how cost effective it might be. Now, going through some of the tax incentives, and within the federal level, there is the Low Income Housing Tax Credit, or LIHTC, which issues around $10 billion worth of tax credits for the acquisition, rehabilitation, and the construction of units specifically targeted towards like low-income households. And then within local and state subsidies, two that I think is most significant within those points there would be firstly the California Housing Accelerator within the Housing and Community Development Department here in California, which issues around $1.6 billion worth of available funds to basically fund any gaps from, let's say, the developer's inability to, access these sort of tax-exempt bond allocations or housing tax credits. And within July 2022, the state of California issued around $400 million in incentives for the conversion of commercial spaces into market rate housing units. Now, at the end, looking into the mutual benefits for the investors, we can sort of split it up into 3 categories, highlighting the revenue upside within this investment. Not going to have, let's say, consistent long-term cash flow unless there is a high demand for these affordable housing units, which, if we look at the vacancy rates for these units, which is around 2.7, 2.6% within 2024, it is pretty clear that as a fact, these units are in high demand. And with long-term residents, that could also equal lower costs in general. And within the incentives and tax credits, a bunch of these tax credits and benefits could be easily repurposed into a variety of potential profit opportunities for both the investors and the developers. And at the end of those 10 years, those private investors or developers can have options to make money from those claimed credits. Then lastly, not going to have lower development costs unless there is a public or private partnership with Amazon and the Housing Equity Fund. That's a clear partnership in which they can offer land or infrastructure support at a discounted price. That being said, I'll pass it off to Jillian C., who will go through the legal aspects of our solution.
So the first step we're going to be addressing is zoning and land use regulations and compatibility. So before moving forward, we'll have to make sure that our building is in either mixed use or residential use. And if not, then we'll have to apply for the necessary rezoning or conditional authorization use permit. Within this process, we'll also be addressing typical land use regulations such as height, density requirements, and parking requirements, and such others.
Yeah.
The second would be building codes and permitting. So once zoning is addressed, then we move into that, and we'll secure the necessary building codes and permits to convert these buildings from office to residential and or mixed use in our case. These codes could require a change of use permit, but they would just require standard upgrades and maybe plumbing, residential electrical systems, accessibility features, and maybe fire safety features. Then Under the California Environmental Quality Act, most development projects require an environmental review to assess any development project. And during this review, it addresses things such as traffic, air quality, and any impact it might have. However, since we're using an existing structure and not changing its footprint, we would likely qualify for a Class 1 categorical exemption, which would help streamline our process in all of our reviews. And even within this exemption, we're committed to following all environmental regulations aligning with the project. And with these, we would comply with any Cal Green Building Code standards. And to meet and exceed those standards, we would incorporate a range of sustainable features. These sustainable features are not limited to, but they can include things such as HVAC units, low flow plumbing, LED lights with motion sensors to help with energy reduction and water usage. And these are all very typical things to do within a project. Now, one of the keys that the legal aspect holds is the San Francisco passed a Downtown Adaptive Reuse program. So in July 2023, after this was passed, it is only applicable for the areas in the red there. However, in those areas in the red, which most of WeWork's properties are in, it would allow us to have a more faster, feasible, it would increase zoning flexibility and much more. Now, if we aren't in those districts in the red, we can apply for our second key, which is the California State Density Bonus. And so because we're proposing our project to be a co-op affordable housing, however, we can apply for this bonus and we can get 70% or 50% increase in more units, which would allow for us to streamline revenue. These buildings will create a change for residential and its communities, and now I'm going to be passing it over to Jillian, who will talk about our ripple effects.
Okay, so these are what a mixed-use layout might look like. So the residential units are on top with some open space, retail, parking, and lobbies on the bottom. And then we also believe that it would be beneficial for Amazon to have an Amazon Go or an Amazon Fresh at the bottom level of the unit. And then here's a residential layout with living spaces, kitchen areas, private bathrooms, and private bedrooms. So these residences not only create lasting housing, they also have immediate and long-lasting ripple effects. Economically, they provide jobs in construction, property management, and maintenance. They have overall business opportunities at the bottom level and create new economic opportunities for the city because there's more residents in town. Environmentally, we will avoid carbon footprint that comes with demolition and reconstruction. We will also be promoting sustainable transit, like walking, biking, and public transportation by being in city centers and upgrading appliances, making things much safer within the unit. We will also create vibrant communities and not dead zones after business hours, meet demand for affordable housing, and maintain a diverse population. In summary, our proposal is ethical by responding to affordable housing demand, creating vibrant communities, and benefiting environmental and social good. It is financially sound, being cost-effective, generating new revenue streams, and offering tax incentives. It is legally sound. It abides by regulation and zoning compliance, offering bonuses and following the Cal Green standards. Sustainabuilders invites you to lead the way with redefining urban living. Together, we can turn empty offices into thriving, affordable homes, tackling the housing crisis head-on while setting a standard for sustainable, community-driven development. This is more than real estate. It's a movement, a chance to show the world how bold partnership can build a better future. Let's transform what's vacant into what's vital. Thank you for your time. We look forward to answering any questions you may have for us.
I'll start. So first of all, great job, you guys. What I'd like to know, the main thing is how are we defining affordable housing? Because California has a very strict definition of that, and it usually has income requirements. And on one of your slides, you showed, at least for, I wrote down the LA numbers, but it was, I believe, $2,000 to $2,800 a month. Yeah, somewhere in there. So if you're hoping to, which we obviously would want to make a profit, and you're going to say have rent for about $2,000 per person, yet they have to qualify for these low income requirements for us to get those tax incentives. Do you know what percentage of the units would be low income and to balance it out, or have you done that analysis?
We were looking at two different kind of sides of the spectrum, especially in like the legal aspect of it. We've done building project layouts where it did have some with like a chunk of it like in a graph like this, where like the bottom of it might be for affordable housing and the top could be for non-affordable housing options
Do you
as
know a
well.
percentage or?
We were thinking more 75 affordable, 25 market rate.
On top of this, Amazon themselves, in order to provide their funds that you saw in the Amazon Housing Equity, allocates some of these funds for residents who are in the 30 to 80% range of the affordable rate of that city that they're in as well.
I have a question. So, two questions, please. First one, what is the scope of the initiative? Are we talking about California only? This is nationwide? So you guys use LA, San Francisco as baseline, but I'm not clear on the scope.
Right, so this is a problem all throughout the country. We selected San Francisco based on a variety of conditions, why we think it's the best for a pilot project, including a lot of the reasons we presented there. But you can look at any city and see that the office vacancy rate are at least 20% in any major city. On top of this, in that Pew and Gensler study, LA was just one of the cities that we decided to provide data on here to compare to San Francisco. But other cities they included there, the study included 5 cities, but on top of that, they did Houston, Denver, and Seattle, I think, who also were experiencing extremely high office vacancy rates. So while we chose San Francisco for a variety of reasons, this is applicable everywhere. On top of this, without trying to get too much into detail, this pilot initiative allows us to approach this with low risk. This time with our We Work in Amazon initiative.
Perfect. So second question now, please. Why do you feel Amazon is the best partner to go through with that idea? Because we need to consider some factors, right? Amazon will be inclined to provide affordable housing for their own employees. But if we think about like strategic terms, I mean, that's negligible, right? The need for affordable housing is way beyond what tech companies need. So first, why would you think they'll be inclined to subsidize this for other people? Second, I mean, the average Amazon worker, especially in large metro areas, makes a lot of money, right? The average, they probably make over $200,000 a year, so that's not quite the people you envision as the ones in need for affordable housing.
Right.
Well, let me finish, please. So the other factor is that Amazon is the very same company who's telling everyone to come back to offices. So the whole concept of working from home and remote options, office convertibility, that was a trend for maybe 2-3 years ago when there was a lot of uncertainty. But right now, as it seems, I think we're coming back to office work. So I think the stock of available properties to do that might be limited in that sense. And Amazon, the big irony is the company that's pushing to return the office. Have you guys reflected on that?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. But if you look at the Housing Equity Fund, the people they're designating their money for are the communities that they're affecting. So that money goes directly towards the people we were talking about who need that housing. It does necessarily go for, it can be applied to Amazon workers as well. As you made the point where corporate workers in Amazon make a lot of money, but they're also a total, a variety of Amazon workers, whether that be their truck drivers or any other major or any other smaller job positions at the company as well.
Personally, I live in a suburb outside of DC area, and within those suburbs, there's been about 5 Amazon warehouses that have just come, and they're requiring all of these workers. I probably get Amazon packages to my house once a day, and so as the other Jillian had kind of addressed in the beginning, and I think Alyssa addressed, our project really it can go for anyone, right? Anyone can do this, but we're here as a younger population looking to move into these big cities where we can't afford with a low salary income. Same thing with the low tier Amazon workers. That's kind of where more we were targeting. corporate people, if you're making over $200,000, I hope you can budget and allocate a way to be able to afford your own house and afford your own apartment where affordable housing doesn't apply to you. We're looking for like service workers, and this can include, like said, low tier Amazon workers. Police officers don't make very much. Firefighters don't make very much. Especially here, we just had like the Los Angeles firefighters, or the fires, and you know, all of these service workers had to work so long hours. There's people coming in left and right, you know. They allocate so much time, and they got a lot of support, but they probably should have got more support for what they had to do here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of more where we were going in it.
Okay, so that leads me to, again, first of all, I want to praise you guys on the amazing presentation, the tone, the pacing, everything you're doing from a technical standpoint, it's amazing. But I just want to help you out with the feedback. Let's say if it was this a real event with investors, I think the problem you're trying to solve, it's pressuring, right? So it's urgent, yes, but maybe the format you're trying, the partnerships and the logistics of that, it might need some updates. That's what I'm saying. I don't think Amazon is probably the best partner for that, because where's the incentive for Amazon in this thing? And then the office convertibility, I just mentioned it was an issue from 2-3 years ago when there was a lot of uncertainty. Right now, things are leading into return to office, so the stock of available units is not going to be as plenty as you might think initially.
There has been a 357% increase from 2021 to 2025 in these conversions, on top of those 70,000 that we saw in 2025. So the number still is skyrocketing
And
in conversions.
specifically in San Francisco this year, there was a stat from January of 2025 where San Francisco had their all-time high vacancy rate, office vacancy rate, and it was around 29%.
Yes, but those are the conversions they initiated 2 years ago, right? When there was this was something, and now they're coming back to office. So what's going to happen next now? Let's say when they go back to office, like there's not going to be available units to do the conversions, at least not in the volumes that you guys are envisioning. Plus, there are the complexities. Some of the buildings are really old. It's hard to convert. They don't have all the natural light. So I know that's not my expertise, but that's a quite known issue as well. Not every commercial building is convertible to housing.
Maybe I can change that real quick. So I'm new to WeWork. Do we own these properties? I forget what's in our portfolio.
Yes, we would own these properties. In San Francisco specifically, we have 7 in the red districts that I have
So they're not
pointed out
capital
here.
leases, we actually own them.
We actually own them.
Okay.
In
So we're
addition,
just paying the conversion costs.
Correct, unless we were to acquire a new building, which that could happen, depending on where this pilot project would lead us. We could want to acquire more buildings. And also that's set aside from if WeWork was to just acquire another building, let's say this project worked well in 2 and they're like, you know what, let's acquire this building. Then that might be an additional cost.
Isn't the real challenge the unhoused population? And how does this address the unhoused population?
Yeah, I do think that is a good point, something we have thought about. I do think, yes, we would like to solve that issue. However, I think there is still a need, an ethical need for a lot of different workers who are coming into the city and now having to leave. And eventually there's going to become even a more ethical problem that's growing and rising each year for these workers who can't afford to live in this city. And we're hoping that if we can help these people who now maybe can move into affordable housing find a solution, that it will hopefully in return decrease in the future any people who are unable to afford a home in the future. Hopefully now they can find a place so that they're able to sustain themselves for the future and hopefully eventually not have any housing.
So I had a question that was tagging on that one. So were you able to quantify the number of people that it would either reduce, getting them off the streets? We have, from the numbers you had previously, an estimated 74,000 homeless people in Los Angeles alone. And so would you know roughly how many people would then be housed through this project and through this initiative in order to kind of estimate how that would impact the homeless population. So for LA alone, the largest percentage of our homeless population is transitionally homeless, which means they're living paycheck to paycheck. They had a hard time, so having housing be more affordable would reduce that. So my kind of a two-part question. One, do you know, were you able to do an estimate of how many people you could house? And then two, are you able to, did you do any analysis to see how reducing the homeless population would increase the property value in that area? Because our downtown areas have a high homeless population, which is reducing our property values.
That's a really good point that you bring up. I know, Andres, you had a number about, I think it was 79,000 people this model would be affordable for?
Yes, if I'm correct, within the study and within the cost here, I think within this study it mentioned how like maybe around 49 to like 79,000 people who would say that these price tags would be affordable to them. And I think given the current housing crisis, and at the moment it's not really getting much better, I would expect that number to increase as it goes on. And I guess to your point, I feel like, look, with people having a roof over their head, that can help them get by, start getting a job, just living a normal, not so chaotic life compared to, I guess, being out within the streets, not really know where else to go. So I feel like with these residents that can have an actual reliable like roof over their head, that can help and harbor much more of a community, especially given this is more like of a co-living space compared to just like, let's say a single family unit or apartment. And I think with that also over time that could increase sort of the property value, and I think in general maybe the value within that community as well.
I think my question was more, were you able to find any statistics, even if it's going in the opposite direction of, you know, when you have a high homeless population, the value decreases by X amount, therefore if we're doing the opposite, helping reduce homelessness, here's how much we could expect or potentially could expect our property value to increase?
I don't have like specific numbers in that category, maybe how much that it could increase, but
I was just wondering.
yeah, no, that's fine, but I feel like it could be given if there's more people that at least have a roof over their head, and that like instead of people that are like out in the streets just trying to get by, I think it would overall help in sort of like increasing the value not only within that co-living unit, but I think also within that neighborhood and community as well.
Fantastic.
I think this has been asked a couple times, I'm just wrapping my head around it now. Are you considering homeless people, or are we considering low-income people, and are those the same? Or are you considering these are people that already rent somewhere, but obviously you're struggling, or is this initiative to suck in homeless people off the street to give them places to live?
So I think that depends on your specific definition of homelessness. Personally, like I feel like there's two types. Like there's one end of the spectrum where they might be homeless but they have a job, and they might be couch surfing one to another, but they can't afford to live there. And then there's, you know, other types where it's the complete end of in their car, they have no source of income minus maybe unemployment money.
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of more working at the top of the spectrum where people would have jobs, you know, but they just kind of can't afford. However, this would be a pilot project, and addressing homelessness, the issue in general, is way more than what we could take on at this current second.
It's a separate presentation.
It's a separate presentation,
Totally,
but with,
yeah.
you know, maybe the work of the partnership, that could be something that we address later on. And that was kind of like all of our ideas. You know, homelessness is such a large issue everywhere worldwide, but how do you, we would need more than us five and you guys in this room to work to address it.
Sure. There's a bunch of reasons why you have to think through that, but one is, you know, that $1,000 a month might not sound like a lot, and $100 a month for parking might not sound like a lot, but that's a lot of money to a lot of people. And subsidies and tax credits and all that, I get it. But like, how do you physically do that? You have to count heads, and then you're like, it's just go back to the floor layout real quick. I don't want to nitpick this, but if this is already happening, then that's great. But the reason why things are coded the way they are and zoned the way they are, as you guys know, is bedrooms have to qualify to be a bedroom. You have to have a window, and you have to have a closet, and you have to have bathrooms. And the way these buildings are built, there's only a block of bathrooms somewhere, right?
Yes.
Maybe two. That's not near enough for if you were to reside to make this floor residential. You guys know this. That's the renovation costs and all that. And I guess all I'm saying is, number one, doing mechanical, electrical, plumbing inside of these buildings to retrofit to add bathrooms is a big project. And that's about as bad as you can get. You know, like knocking out walls and stuff is easy, but putting in new bathrooms is extremely difficult. So, but it's great to know this is actually happening, and I think it's very interesting. And if you create more units, theoretically, even if people that are moving out of places to go to these units, you're freeing up space somewhere that could theoretically take people off the streets somewhere else. But anyway, it's fascinating. This is really expensive. So who's going to upkeep this? And I mean, this, if you ever done the OpEx of like keeping if you've ever had rental properties, I mean, can you imagine this?
Yeah.
And who does that? WeWork is paying for the carpet and for the paint and for the thing, and now you're like a landlord. I mean, it's a different business model.
WeWork does a lot of, if you've ever like visited their website, you can rent out a chair like this.
Yeah.
And so when we were looking at them, they have a very good community model, and their website's very good for being able to just rent a chair or rent them, whatever. They have very good leasing models, very good knowledge. They've been in the ground for a long time.
Totally.
So
yeah, there's this man.
we were
Are they bankrupt though?
They were, at some point. Back in 2023, they were
Yeah.
facing financial instability. They were rescued, now have new investors and a whole new governance system and financial system are now financially stable.
If I can give a quick point to like the additional costs that you're talking
Yeah.
about. I know like I mentioned those two significant ones I thought were important within the state level, but I think maybe also what could help with those costs, I think there's also like Section 8 housing as well, which I think was mentioned there, which sort of like the government will sort of subsidize any sort of additional housing costs that might be faced. So like the tenant will pay sort of like the original portion, I guess, of their housing, and I guess if there's any additional costs that might come up with it, I think the government will help subsidize and sort of like do that. And I know through research that is accepted in San Francisco, so I guess that is an alternative or option that we could go for.
I think it's a fascinating idea because WeWork was in trouble, and because people went home for work, it was just a bad business model at a bad time. But they were probably looking for something to do with all that office space, right? So
they still have a ton of office
and they
space.
still have a ton of office space, and I'm sure they're talking about this kind of stuff. Yeah, that's interesting.
And unemployment rate will just has this year already continued to kind of increase with some government cut funding too. So it also was another thing that we were kind of looking at too. You know, there's a decent amount of people I know personally that are losing their jobs. So where do you go from here?
Yeah.
I have just two final questions. Sorry, last ones. So you mentioned a Class 1 environmental exemption. What is that? And how much would that save us? Do you know?
So it's more time saving than it is money saving. So
time is money.
Time is money in this. The environmental review can take months. Whatever. It can take a long time depending on how quick the government would work with us to get this environmental review done, how many impacts of a building would be. However, we would be using existing structures, and most WeWork structures should be up to code, up to date. All of these environmental factors should be up to date except for potentially parking. That would be the only one. However, in San Francisco, there is a lot, in big cities, parking is always an issue. Public transportation is pretty big in San Francisco, so potentially our residents might not have cars, they might have bikes instead, which would be helping. So this could streamline the process, and the Class 1 could take up to just only 2 weeks to get this.
That'd be a big thing to save on time when you're doing construction, because then we could just start renting the units out sooner. So the other thing, you mentioned a 75-25 split between affordable and regular housing units. Have you considered renting out converting the top floors, say, to luxury, like penthouse type suites to help balance out if you do like 20% of high end, 20% on the very low end to balance that out and kind of subsidize those lower end units? And then the middle would just be our main bread and butter. Can't talk.
I don't know if we necessarily put a number to the figure on that. However, in kind of the logical thinking, they would be, maybe 2 to 3 times, those apartments would be 2 to 3 times the amount of what the affordable housing would be in that. And so they kind of would even out, and there would still be a revenue profit, even with like getting Section 8 housing subsidies or tax credits or something. There would always be revenue running through, even if it would be affordable. And that's kind of why the 2575, it seems larger. Like, why would you have that for affordable? However, like you said, if it is like a luxury apartment, or let's say that we have like a retail up there, or like a company that has it, we could have such a gap to where all of it makes
Yeah,
sense.
the upper floors are always gonna be more desirable for that view.
Yes.
So my thought is, if we could charge more, then if we're charging more for the high end, help subsidize the lower end and can bring that middle group to a little more affordable.
I think that's a great point. And additionally, there are some numbers that we haven't exactly hashed out, but that you and WeWork themselves, as our existing partners, can hash out. And you definitely have the freedom and this project and concept to hash out some percentages and numbers on that as well.
I guess if I could point out one more tax incentive up my sleeve, there is sort of the San Francisco approval measure C, which they waive sort of like the transfer tax that they had originally for the first transfer. Let's say if it's like an office space into sort of more of like commercial co-living use. So I mean, obviously you mentioned maybe some of those luxury apartments could be at the top. We can convert it to that. I think maybe there would be some cost, maybe much more cost with doing that. But so I would think maybe with San Francisco approval of Measure C and waiving that transfer tax, that could help out with it as well.
Thank you.
I have one more, but I'd like to refer to you because you didn't ask any questions yet, so.
With
before I ask my question. All right.
With these CapEx costs and the rents, the value of this deal accrues to who? Does it accrue to WeWork? Does it accrue to Amazon? To the community?
Right. And like I said earlier, we haven't exactly hashed out those numbers. We understand that in these projects, retainments might go to a few different parties, including real estate agents and developers as well. In typical fashion, some rough percentage we would have was around, based on a few research studies, was around like 20-30% going to people in like WeWork's expertise, around the same for Amazon, and then a little bit lower for other parties. But again, we haven't exactly hashed that out specifically, as we want you to be able to come up with those numbers yourselves.
And one of the reasons why we didn't hash it out specifically is we don't have an identified specific building on 52nd Street or whatever that we looked at and we're like, we're gonna take this. Because this is a project that could vary from city to city, we never really truly identified a specific building and said, hey, this is that. However, we would put in the work if you guys wanted to identify a specific building to help figure out how to make those costs beneficial for you and WeWork.
Sorry, just going back, as a remark, you pivoted perfectly, right? When you said that you guys are not trying to address the homeless issue, which is huge and highly complex, so massive work. You guys doing great. But still, you have not clarified yet why you feel Amazon is the best partner for that initiative. I would like to know about that, because you mentioned at some point, okay, so it's not only the engineers and the white collar folks, but also the people who work in fulfillment centers. However, Amazon's fulfillment centers are not in the large metro areas.
That's right.
Here in California, for example, where they are at Lake Elsinore, right? So it's very far from LA. That's Inland Empire. So how would that address the need for affordable housing for the folks working in the supply chain area of Amazon? And why do you think they're still the best partner for that?
You can start.
I would say personally, Amazon, when I look at Amazon, I think of a world-renowned company that everybody loves. They're not only just at your back door, but they're everywhere across the world. And so the reason why we thought first that they would be a great partner is just simple brand reputation. Amazon has a very good brand reputation. They have great revenue, great leadership, and everybody knows and loves them.
Going off that, Amazon has always said that they're Earth's most customer-centric company. Again, it's a global company. I think with that, you have a large customer base and following. I think people are going to be looking to Amazon to see what they're doing for sustainability and ethics and stuff like that. So I think if they're spearheading this initiative, our hope is that they, with the money that they have, the $3.6 billion allocated to this, that companies will follow in the footsteps because it is such a globally renowned company.
I think you've already demonstrated your willingness to sacrifice some revenue and profit with that Amazon Housing Equity Fund as well.
Okay. Done with questions? Take a deep breath. You made it.
Nice job.
Drew, you want to start with feedback?
Yeah, overall, the presentation, visually, aesthetically, was really good. And that's not easy to do for anyone who makes slides, as you guys will your entire career. So nice job on that. I think you did a good job of outlining the problem that you were trying to solve, the sustainability goal and the targets. And I think it's a really complex, it's just a really complex thing when it comes to housing. And as you guys researched and figured out, and it's a lot, but that's, you know, people are trying to solve this problem, right? And it's important to think through that, as you guys just did for this exercise, to give these big cities and some of those leaderships some grace in a sense that this is not easy, right? And how do you do that? Financially, I thought you did a great job. You guys obviously did your homework, and it was really well done. There isn't that, whether the numbers are right or wrong, very few groups, I can tell you already, not seeing them just from last year, got to the level of depth and thought financially that you guys did. So very well done on that. And okay, that's all I have.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I thought you guys did a great job. You like you just said, you clearly did your research because you were able to answer the questions anytime I asked for a number, you could actually provide it, which means you did the research and you had that on hand, which is fantastic. So great job there. It's not an easy subject. It's not like you're just selling a product where it's just, this is how we market it, this is how we're going to sell it, and that's relatively straightforward. It's a very complicated, convoluted subject, and you're having to partner with governments, and they have all sorts of regulations, and it's never easy, right? And then you're trying to turn a profit on that without sounding horrible by saying we're going to profit off your cost of living. So yeah, it's a very delicate thing you guys took on, and you guys did a great job with it. That was a challenge. And you did a great job with some very difficult questions, so well done. The only feedback I would have, try not to read off your cards. That's the only thing. Try and just know, you don't have to have it memorized, just know your subject matter. You know it, you already do. So just be confident, and it becomes a little more conversational. Then you did a good job when you were doing it, not reading off your cards. Just make sure you're engaging the audience, right?
Just to follow up on Michelle's points, you did all of those things she recommends in the Q&A. So you were very, great eye contact,
Absolutely.
really responsive to the questions, really good job. I'm gonna pick one nit. Take a look at slide 14. Typo. Number 3.
It's always, it's just,
So just
always
That's
has,
me, right?
proofreading, but
happens the best.
obviously the research you did showed through. Good job.
Just a couple, so agree with all that. Being a consultant, clients always want to know, why should I listen to you? So why is sustainable, or whatever your firm is, so why should I listen? So credentialize yourself a bit. Why is your pitch worthwhile? So you can make up a story or anything like that, it doesn't really matter. if your school has mock interviewing where you get videotaped, do that. It's a great thing, moving back and forth, whatever your fancies are. That's great. I wasn't clear on the financial model. You guys had a lot of detail, clearly great research. So what does that mean to me? I don't understand. Am I gonna make money? Is it accretive to my shareholders? Is it aligned with our strategy? You had a lot of the pits and the variables, tax incentives, CapEx, so much per square foot. Great, but what does that mean? That calculus equates to what? A return of 10%, 20%, I'm interested, I'm not interested. So don't bury me with the details, tell me why I should write a check.
Okay. Would you say the, I guess like the mutual benefits portion? Because I feel like that's like a little summarization. Is that like hard to like understand?
Yeah, so my heart wants to help the community.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what my shareholders get.
Okay.
Oh, them.
So sad.
You know, like the developers and investors. So like,
Yeah, I'm just, so how is this linked to my values? How is it linked to my strategy? What are we trying to do? Do we not have enough workers that work at fulfillment centers? Maybe, but why on Market Street in San Francisco versus out in Tracy where the fulfillment centers are?
That's right.
I have some feedback too, and I'm sorry if I come across like a little edgy on the questions, but I think the purpose is like to force you to think, right, in different ways and face the opposition. And you guys did remarkably. I agree with the judges on the presentation, yes, on the reading cards, but you felt very naturally, you know, answering the questions, so that tells me that you did amazing research. I still think the problem, it's a great problem to solve from a business standpoint. However, the execution might need some reassessment, especially on the partnerships. This is a highly complex issue that involves commercial real estate owners. For right now, for example, that's a lot of companies in distress because the way they finance the buildings, they finance to variable rates. So now with the interest rates going up, it's very expensive for them to service to that, which actually creates an opportunity to buy properties. You know, they are distressed. So from a WeWork standpoint, it actually works. But the Amazon's commitment, it's quite limited, even though they might be willing to do something to promote their brand image. That's a huge investment to achieve that. And also the environment. I mentioned this discussion about converting office buildings was like from 2 years ago when there was a lot of uncertainty. But right now, companies are pushing people to come back. So naturally, the downtown districts are going to get revitalized anyways. And that's something to think about, but that's the big strategic thinking. But technically you guys hit all the boxes. You did an amazing presentation and doing well in terms of competition. And I'm proud of you guys because I'm an instructor, so I feel you, all my students, even though they're not my students. And you did an amazing job.
Thank you.
So just one sort of last bit of guidance, because you will always be doing presentations, whatever you do after you graduate. So it's going to be part of your life going forward. And there should be 3 parts to any presentation. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So you tie the 3rd part to the 1st part. What do you want us to take away? Is there a concise message that you want to leave us with? And that should be how you close. Thank you.